Do we have the courage to do the right thing, even when it's difficult? Do we have the courage to do what is right, even when we might go alone? We're entering into this election season, and it's difficult to figure out how to who to side with and who to go with, because everyone that we see seems to have some sort of major flaw. There's flaws in policy, and there's flaws in character, and how do we know who to side with, who to go for? And it takes real courage to be willing to admit faults, to admit flaws, to admit weaknesses. And I was thinking about this idea of courage. My mind was drawn back to the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel, you have at least 3 different opportunities where Daniel and his friends could have lacked courage, could have just gone with the crowd. Very, very early on, Daniel and his friends they're taken to Babylon, and they're given this choice to eat from the king's table. But Daniel knew that many of the foods on the king's table went against God's dietary plan, the plan that he had for his people. And so Daniel said, "No, give me and my friends just vegetables and water." And the one put in charge of Daniel was unsure if that was going to be a good idea. And he said, "We'll test this for 10 days and see how we are after 10 days. And after 10 days, they look stronger and healthier and were wiser than the others who were there." Shortly after this, there's this showdown where the king had built this huge golden statue to himself and said, "When the music plays, you must bow down to me. Bow down to this statue." And Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, "We're not going to be bowing down to any idol." And so when the music played, they stayed standing. And the penalty for this was to be thrown into a furnace of fire that the king had built up the temperatures to be even hotter than typical. And they said, "You have one more chance." And they said, "We aren't going to bow down. And we trust that God will save us. And if he doesn't, we still know that we've done the right thing because we've obeyed our God." And the music plays, they don't bow down. The king throws them into the fiery furnace, and they survive. In fact, when they come out, they don't even smell as if they've been around a fire. There's not even a hint of smoke on them. There's another time the king had changed, and the leader, the other advisors didn't like the popularity that Daniel had with the king. And so they came up with this idea that for the next month, they could only pray to the king and not to any other god, because they knew that Daniel prayed to God at the morning and evening. His windows open, he prayed facing Jerusalem. So they make the rule the king puts into effect, and Daniel goes and he prays, and they captured Daniel in this trap, and they bring him before the king, and the penalty was to be thrown to the lions. They had these lions in a den, in a caged area, and they threw Daniel in there, and they were expecting him to be completely destroyed. The next morning, the king comes and he checks on Daniel, and God had closed the mouths of the lions there. And Daniel rested among them, and he was brought up. See, in each of these cases, it took courage to do what was right in the face of pressure, in the face of political and societal pressure, to go and to do what is wrong, to go and to violate their conscience. But in each of these situations, God's people did what was right. And when they did what was right, they were blessed. So today, do you have courage to do the hard thing? Do you have the courage to do the difficult right instead of the easy wrong? Can you make the hard right instead of the easy wrong? It takes real courage. That kind of courage takes prayer. To Pray to God that He would be with you, to walk with you. It takes knowing Scripture, knowing what God calls us and wants us to do. How should we live out our faith in this day and age? It can be difficult to do. It takes real courage to walk with God. I pray that you're doing that this week. I look forward to seeing you soon. I love you guys, and I'm praying for you, and I hope I get to see you this Sunday.